The impact of COVID-19 keeps being felt in so many different ways. Now it appears that teachers who are employed by school governing bodies around the country, in other words, teachers maybe at government schools, but who are paid by the school governing body, are not being paid because parents have not paid school fees. You can imagine the argument from some parents. They'll say they're losing their jobs, they're on a reduced income, their children have not been at school during the lockdown period. But if this means teachers are now not getting paid either. Basil Manuel is the Executive Director of the Teachers Union, Naptosa. Basil, good afternoon to you. I think there are around 40,000 governing body teachers, as they're called, around the country. Do you know how many of them are not getting paid?
Stephen, I don't know the exact figure, but it's more than just teachers, because there's about 40 to 50,000 teachers, but 150,000 general workers in our schools. These are from cleaning staff to secretarial staff, etc. So it is actually a large cohort of people that are dependent on payment by government, by governing bodies.
I mean, do we know if they're just not getting paid or if they're on a reduced salary? I imagine it also differs from school to school.
It differs from school to school, and these are the incidents we've had. We've had governing bodies offering to pay their 13th check as opposed to a monthly salary so that they could tide it over. And that was one scenario. The other scenario was a reduction in salary. And then, of course, some governing bodies were hoping that life would normalize and payments would come in. But, of course, it's a vicious cycle. If parents are not getting paid, they can't afford to pay, and the knock-on effect goes to the teachers. But, of course, some teachers have been laid off, and so class sizes start ballooning, and that is exactly what you didn't want to have happen. So there's no easy solution. We've suggested to governing bodies that they must also apply for TERS funding, because they are essentially businesses, and they are entitled to bailouts from that aspect as well.
I mean, TERS funding, I imagine, wouldn't really cover a teacher's full income, I'm afraid.
No, it wouldn't cover fully, but of course it could be a stopgap measure, and we've asked the Education Department to also intervene. Remember that schools get the norms and standards allocation, which cannot be used for paying teacher salaries, and we've asked for a relaxation of even those measures to allow the payment of salaries, because we can't encourage a large-scale layoff of teachers as well as education workers.
Well, I mean, you talk about education workers. It's amazing how much work happens around a school that's not teaching. I mean, many people will probably remember the names of the school secretaries at their primary school because they played such an important role.
Absolutely, Stephen. And without those additional workers, remember, most schools only get one cleaner and one secretary. So in order to be able to manage all the admin, schools, and many schools, and don't only think about Model C type schools, many schools employ people to assist. And without them, in fact, things will grind to a halt. The cleaning won't be to the level that we would like it to be, let alone the grounds and, of course, the secretarial work, which is a lot, which is relieving teachers of a lot of that responsibility.
Could this force some teachers out of the profession? I mean, you talk about the sort of ballooning problem. It seems to get worse and worse. They can't work for nothing. At the same time, they're probably, many teachers we know, very dedicated. And I must say, many school staff generally, whether they be cleaners or secretarial staff or people who manage the playing fields if they have them, that sort of thing, often very dedicated. The school is a whole community. I mean, this is devastating for school communities.
It certainly is, Stephen. We've also made another appeal to provincial departments in terms of employing these additional teachers for the people in place of the people who have gone off on comorbidity leave, that those governing body teachers need to be given preference if they are in the same school where there is another need, but their own post is in trouble. So we've put a number of measures on the table, but of course not all of them are being looked at necessarily, but we're certainly not leaving this lying. We're also appealing to governing bodies to be fair, and to school communities to also be fair in terms of the payment of fees. But of course we will go through the processes if we have to, but we are hoping to save as many jobs as possible.
Is government taking this seriously enough? And I realise, you know, from time to time there have been issues of tension around school governing body teachers. That tension, I must say, seems to have dissipated now. But do you think government, the Basic Education Department, is as worried about this as they should be?
No, I don't get that impression. You see, unfortunately, it is seen to be a problem that is not theirs. And we've appealed for better sense, because in fact, those are the schools that we need to look at and emulate, because what we want is the better pupil-teacher ratios. And the performance of those schools, whilst we all celebrate it, is not only because of exceptional teachers, but it's also got to do with class sizes and the type of things that they do differently. So we want to save every type of school. Every school matters, and every teacher in every school matters to us.